Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Be Like Christ. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a great day. I would be interested if you leave down in the comments where you're listening from. I can see some of those stats for people who get on the website, but as far as the YouTube channel, I don't know exactly where everyone's from. So if you are from some interesting part of the world, or even a not interesting part of the world, as you you might consider yourself to live, I'd be interested in knowing. So leave that down in the comments. On the website, as I just mentioned, you can get the PDF version of this study, which you're going to see up on the screen, but you can download it for free. We are on Numbers chapter 26 today, and as always, let's start off with our major characters that we're going to talk about in this chapter. The first one is Moses. We know him pretty well by now. He's been a main character in Exodus, Leviticus, and now the book of Numbers. He was God's selected man to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt and lead them to Canaan. We also are talking about Eliezer in this chapter. We haven't talked about him as much. So Aaron used to be the high priest. Eliezer is now the high priest. He was Aaron's son, one of his, I believe he had 4 sons in total. Then Caleb. We talked about him back in Numbers chapter 13. He was one of the 12 spies that was selected to go and spy out the land of Canaan. He was one of only two spies that put their faith in God and said that the Israelites could take the land of Canaan and encouraged them to try. He was from the tribe of Judah. Then finally Joshua, also known as Hoshea. He was Moses' assistant, and he accompanied Caleb as one of the 12 spies. He was from the tribe of, I don't have it written down here, I think it's the tribe of Ephraim. You can fact check me on that. These events occurred at the end of the Israelites' 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. So this would be approximately 1450 BC, maybe a year, maybe 2 years before that. And in terms of our geography, the Israelites are still camped at the border of the Moabites and the Amorites at a place called Shittim, which was near Pisgah, which you'll see on the map. Now, in terms of our outline, this is a very long chapter with 65 verses, but it's very easy to summarize because the majority of this chapter is all about a census, the second census, in fact, that took place amongst the Israelites. God told Moses and Eliezer to take a census of the people while they were camped in the plains of Moab. It had been approximately 40 years since the first census was taken. Do you remember that one, when that one was? It was in Numbers chapter 1. And so if you wondered why the book of Numbers is called the book of Numbers, well, a lot of it is because there's all this record of the numbers of the populations of these tribes. So it had been 40 years since Numbers chapter 1, all those wanderings in the wilderness. And the census only counted a specific type of person. It wasn't like a general population census. It counted men 20 years and older who were capable of going to war, just like the first one. The tribes and their census numbers are listed below. I guess I'll read all of them for the sake of being covering all the material. So Reuben had 43,730 people, Simeon 22,200, Gad 40,500, Judah 76,500, Issachar 64,300, Zebulun 60,500 people, Manasseh 52,700, Ephraim 32,500, Benjamin 45,600, Dan 64,400, Asher 53,400, Naphtali 45,400. So the total of all of the men of Israel who are 20 years old and older who were able to go to war was 601,730. And the text tells us, actually at the end of the chapter, that every Israelite who had been counted in the first census had died in the wilderness, just as God said would happen. The only exceptions to that were Joshua and Caleb, because of the faith that they had had when they were sent to spy out the land of Canaan. The last 13 verses or so can be broken down into 2 sections. Verses 52 through 56, we talk about the division of the land of Canaan amongst the tribes. So when the tribes took the land of Canaan and conquered it, the land was to be divided up between the tribes by casting lots. The amount of land that each tribe received depended on their numbers in the census. Larger the tribe, the more land; smaller the tribe, the less land that they received. Then in the final section, verses 57 through 65, Going to talk about the tribe of Levi. You may know that, or you may have recognized that they weren't in the list above. The Levites were not included in the general census because, as you might remember from Leviticus and the first part of Numbers, the Levites were set apart for a special service to God, and they didn't receive a portion of land like all of their other countrymen. But the text does tell us that there were 23,000 males who were 1 month old and older in the tribe of Levi. Now for our application section, I chose not to do an application, mostly because it's kind of hard to pull an application out of a census list, but I'm sure there's one. Somebody can find one and put one in the description. But what I thought I would do is compare the first census numbers with the second census. So what does 40 years look like, and what did it do to the nation of Israel? Well, the census, as we mentioned in Numbers chapter 1, happened about 40 years before this one, and surprisingly, the numbers actually aren't all that different. The nation remained somewhat stable in terms of population. We don't see any growth, we actually see a slight decline. The first census total was 603,550 men. The second census total was about 2,000 less than that, 601,730 men. And the population of fighting men in each tribe remained relatively stable. Some tribes gained a few, lost a few. The real exception to the stability is the tribe of Simeon. Simeon, in Numbers chapter 1, had 59,300. It was one of the largest tribes. But in Numbers chapter 26, Simeon had 22,200 fighting men. So they basically a third of what they were. And I'm not exactly sure if, I don't think that we've read anything in the text thus far that explains that drastic decrease. I'll be watching out for clues moving on forward through the text, and I'll let you know if I find anything. So that is Numbers chapter 26, the second census of Israel.